I want to preface this video with some information about when it was recording. It was recorded after I had recorded the George Floyd video, but before that had been published on my channel. So I was kind of talking about things inside of that video, referencing to it before people in my chat on the live stream had seen it. I was also, at that point in time, far more ignorant as to what was going on. I've since invested some more time in reading about the demonstrations that are happening and also the rioting aspect of things, and would like to make a clear distinction that there is a massive movement towards peaceful protests going on, and there is rioting and stuff happening as well. But I think it's probably the best way to look at this situation is to separate those and understand that people have the right to assemble and demonstrate and stand up for these issues, and that with that usually does come a very small minority of people making things worse. The actions that they take as rioters, though, they do say something about the state of our society, and I do not support their actions, but I believe we can at least learn from them in some way or another, which is something I touch on in this video. But you'll also hear me tiptoe a little bit around some of the specifics that people bring up about videos they've seen on Twitter and whatnot. At the time, I had not seen a lot of this stuff. I'd seen only a handful of videos, but now I've actually spent the time seeing a lot more. I've realized that something very interesting is happening at this point of time. I believe that the reality from a statistical perspective is that police brutality is essentially at an all-time low. And with it being at an all-time low, it obviously still happens. That is not a dismissive statement. It's something that needs to be corrected. But what I think this movement is encapsulating is the fact that we can see it so clearly more than ever, the brutality that is there. There are horrific historical stories that I have learned about over the years, educating myself, watching documentaries about the history of America and the civil rights movement. But the visibility of that brutality is harder to see than it is today because everyone's holding smartphones and people are filming this and they're putting it on Twitter. And having spent the time to watch some of these videos on Twitter, I've seen that there is, clearly some just policing going wrong. Today I saw a police officer shove an elderly man who fell backwards and banged his head and was bleeding, and it looked very critical. And I hope that man is okay, of course, but there are just so many examples like this, and it's all being captured, and I think we're just seeing like the perfect storm of things coming together. There is also another side to this as well, which is the way in which we're seeing police agitate first, or so it comes across in a video. Remember, when someone shares a video, you might not see the full extent of events that have taken place, but there clearly is a lot of aggression happening, and this is always something that's been a sort of story that I've understood, that the state often aggresses the crowds to create these problems so they can paint, the pictures of all the destruction and despair and blame it on the protesters. I've always understood that as an idea that has been corroborated by many people's stories, but it feels like, again, we're seeing this firsthand so much more right now. There are so many videos where police are really clearly agitating and causing the problem and being heavy-handed, and they need to be accountable for that heavy-handedness. And there's just loads of videos circulating. It's absolutely crazy. I saw one of media lying down on the ground in a police station, and this guy is complying with every single order, and a police officer just walks by and casually pepper sprays them in the face while they've got their hands on the ground saying, "We're media." And this is, obviously an example of the police excessive use of force, but also this is the media. There are so many stories going around of media and journalism getting attacked. And I wonder, where in the power structure does the orders that go to the police, or the atmosphere of what type of policing they're going to go out and conduct, where does that stem from? Because the president comes across as a hard law and order, I will put my fist down and stomp this out. That's sort of been his attitude towards all of this. And also he's created this war against establishment media, calling them out as fake news so often. And I wonder if we're sort of seeing, either directly or indirectly, an influence from him on the way the policing is happening, because they're just, blatantly attacking media, and where does that come from? Why is the policing like this? Is this actually what it was always like, but now we're just seeing it more visibly than ever? That is a possibility as well. This whole situation it's remarkable. It's historic. We haven't seen something like this take place before, and I feel myself as I talk now, my mind is just going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I should probably think these things over a little bit more. So now we'll jump into the video that was clipped from stream quite a few days ago. Well, we got Smartin1018 for 49 months saying, X, I don't mean to bring negativity or sensitive topics, but I'm from Minnesota where the George Floyd murder took place. Care to chip in? I've already spent some time divulging my thoughts on that topic, and it will be on the xisumasays channel later today. But if I can say anything, I would always refer, and I do this in my video anyway, when you watch it later you hear me say it, I always refer to that MLK quote about riots. If you just search MLK quote riots and go and read it, it's a fantastic quote. And it's the way that I look at things like that. Gets you thinking about, what's the reason this is happening? Stenoa says, you should look into the riots across America, because here in LA, people are breaking into buildings and looting. Yeah, so I'm aware of that. That's actually something, again, I talk about in my video about the looting. So I'll bring it to what I said, like a portion of what I said in that video. Is it happened over here about 10 years ago that we had riots and looting, and it was obvious that some people were out there protesting over the incident that happened, and some people were opportunistic and looting. However, the way I always look at it is that picture those people that are looting. Okay, picture them as people, and imagine that they had a luxury mansion and millions of dollars in the bank. Do you think they would be out there looting? The answer is probably no. When you got a mansion and all of that, you're not going to go risk looting a telly. You've probably got 10 of them in your mansion. So the inequality in society leads people to behave like this when there is opportunity, right? Now, what I'm saying is not an excuse for the actions. It is just to understand it, that the less equality there is in society, the more potential there is for these things not to happen. So I look at the underlying cause as being, society itself. If society was utopian, okay, if imagine food was like literally free, and you could always have a place to go and sleep that was comfortable, and you didn't have to worry about work. We got some amazing technology that just makes all this stuff appear out of thin air, right? Can you imagine there being riots and looting in that society? It becomes less likely. If you imagine the society we have now, but imagine that unemployment was 50% and we were struggling to feed everyone, then it makes so much more sense that more people would riot. So it's about the state of society, that their actions are reflecting it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going, it's okay, thumbs up, go do that. Not at all. As MLK said, you condemn the riots, but you also condemn the conditions that lead to the riots. So I would make it less about saying that rioting is wrong. I think we kind of all understand that this situation is wrong and not right. But how do we get to the root of this, and then how do we address it? Because if we don't want to see these things happen in our society, we've got to improve our society and take care of one another better. Cops turned it into a protest to a riot. Undercover cops burned down the buildings. King Hyder, every single event like this that I think ever has taken place, I've always heard that the police started it and all this kind of stuff, right? And I believe that the possibility of that being true is certainly a possibility. However, I don't know the particular circumstances into which I could say I agree with you, and quite often is it an idea that, of course the police are the ones starting the riot, right? It's what they want to do and all this. I don't know if there's evidence out there for the current situation, but here's my own experience with it. 10 years ago, when we had the London riots and all of this, there was a very, very particular example that Didn't require any kind of conspiratorial thinking, but you just had to look at this picture that was being plastered across the news. It was like on the front paper of the Sun, and just think about it for a minute. And the picture was of about, I don't know, a gang of 30 reporters circled around two people smashing windows, and there were actually police officers visibly onlooking in the background. Now, this doesn't obviously add up to like the police started it or anything, but it looked incredibly orchestrated. These one or two people stepping out of line from the protest happened to be in the same place with all of the press, and the police are just looking on and not stopping them from doing this. And that picture was really telling to me. It said, hang on, something's not quite right here. But again, can't then say that that means the police started it or anything like that. Anyway, I think it's pretty fair to say that if you're going to have a protest, there are probably some people who will come along to cause trouble. It only ever takes a small amount of people, maybe sometimes even, just literally a handful, one or two, three or four, and they can turn, a crowd of people into something very negative. I remember being at Download Festival 06 and 07 when there were riots, and, it literally just took a couple of people, like a small amount of people, to cause the incident and also change the behavior of people around them. So yeah, I don't think it's smart to like say this unless you've got clear evidence, but I think it's very obvious and reasonable that it could just literally be a couple of people that step out of line and then start they worsen the situation. And I think excessive police force can also lead to riots. It's just, we're talking about crowds of people and like really complicated incidents with lots of people having different opinions on it. And like, well, where is the bit where we can point and go, aha, we got evidence? And it's hard to see. And I think that for the most part, these things are kind of all reasonable to say this could potentially happen. But unless you got the smoking gun, then it's hard to really say, it's the police that have done it, right? But again, I don't know if there's actual evidence circulating about that. The undercover cop burning the building down has been confirmed, and there's video evidence of the police shooting at reporters who are far from the riots, says King Kida. Well, I don't know where you got your information from. It could be that that's true. I'm not dismissing you. I'm quite ignorant to the situation just because of the amount of information I've taken in. It's not been a lot. Been looking at BBC News once or twice a day and reading a couple of articles, and that's about it. Police are definitely instigating some of the riots. There's videos of it on Twitter. They're also tear gassing and shooting rubber bullets at peaceful protesters, says Nahet. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Just remember, when you see a video on Twitter, you're watching a particular point in time. You don't know what's led up to that point. And I'm not trying to be dismissive. I just think, these are very sensitive topics, and we need to do the due diligence of really understanding what we're talking about. Especially if we're going to be accusational. I'm not saying too much about it, essentially, right? I'm just giving you my the way I look at these things and reason around them, as opposed to saying, like, hey, it's definitely those cops. That's not what I'm saying, right? Earlier today, CNN was covering the protests, and they arrested the whole team, even though they were asking to go and be very peaceful or something. The messages are moving. Yeah, I saw actually a skit from a comedian about that. And the way in which they put their skit together kind of informed me that it was very obvious that a news crew had been arrested. And that is a little bit troubling. I'd be very curious to learn more about what's behind that. Like, why did they arrest a news team? You're not supposed to. You're supposed to let journalists do their job and report things. I tell you what's really troubling for this world right now is the downfall of journalism. And it's really strange because I was so untrusting of journalism as a young person. Like, I always thought everything was kind of like, New World Order and stuff like that. Very conspiratorial thinking. And what's really weird is to see that media establishment actually be chipped away at. The integrity of journalism is very odd in the current climate. And it's kind of in times like this that we need it most, it feels like. It's been replaced by this form of like social media, my opinion is my news kind of thing, right? Like my feelings are my facts. And like, you know, I once wanted to see this kind of establishment change for whatever reasons, and what it's changed into is kind of horrible. So hearing that, you know, actual, let's say, credited, again, CNN, the sort of thing that I used to hate when I was younger, I used to see them as like establishment journalism and media and all this. The fact that they could be arrested when they're trying to cover, like, that says a lot to the relationship with the ability to cover events. When the police start shutting down people's ability to cover it, that is very alarming. It is very, very alarming. Eric Land says, so much American media is so diverse now, and so much of it is hardly even factual. Yeah, very true. Just look out for it when you're watching whatever news network you look out for it. Try and pick apart the language and notice when people are saying that things are a particular way without actually referring to facts, and it more being about opinions and this is how I see the world. There's so much of that going on.